we're going to be talking today about why it matters for hirers to support their freelancers' mental health. As we talked about in last week's post, there are a number of different blobs around the freelancer support ecosystem, and each of those blobs play a certain role towards freelancers, get a certain benefit and value from freelancers, and a major audience in that diagram is employers, hirers, the people hiring freelancers to work with them. And it has over the years been incredibly challenging to get employers and hirers to open their eyes to the importance of mental health and supporting freelancers. I think a big part of that is it's a commodity. There are so many freelancers. It's very easy to not worry about the first one because another one will come along after it. But I think there's a really strong case around why it matters to care about your freelancers, to put support and infrastructure in place. And there's just a few thoughts which I wanted to share. Mental health at work has been a significant topic for, over the last decade. It's definitely front of mind for a lot of employers, not least due to Deloitte research, a number of studies which they've shown around a 5-to-1 ROI on every pound spent on supporting employees. So for every pound which they spend on mental health initiatives at work, they save £5 through improved productivity, reduced time off due to illness, presenteeism, all that kind of stuff. So really positive. Lots of data to show invest in mental health support and good working practices. Taking care of your people has a positive commercial benefit. Whilst there's a legal requirement to look after the physical and mental health and safety of your employees, there's an obvious commercial benefit too. And often that's the only measure that matters to a lot of companies. However, increasingly, for many businesses, workforce is not just employees. Estimates suggest, and it's really hard to find this data, but estimates are suggesting around a third of UK businesses work with temporary or contract or freelance individuals. And when you look at businesses which are global, that have global footprints, 80% of global businesses are working with those temporary workers. And 65% of businesses in the UK say they're looking to increase their use of contingent labour, contingent workers, and I'm just using that as a catch-all, in the next 12 months. So a significantly large proportion of the workforce are freelance, and a lot of organisations are working with freelancers. So when your workforce is not just employees, ensuring good mental health of your people needs to include everyone you work with, regardless of contract, whether that's employee or contract or freelance or supplier, whatever you want to call that. Many employers will say that mental health is not their responsibility. The mental health of their freelancers is not on them. Many will claim that doing things to support their freelancers puts them at risk of being inside IR35 or making them look like an employee, which is not the case. I've spoken to HMRC, and that is not something they are worried about. A lot of organisations just say they don't have the capacity and the headspace, or the budget or the responsibility internally. And a lot of organisations who want to do this just don't know where to start. The Health and Safety at Work Act from 1974 does place a duty of care on employers to ensure, as far as reasonably practicable, the health and safety and welfare of all workers. And that does include employees, contractors, freelancers, agency workers, I'm reading off the list, and other contingent workers. The Act also covers both physical and mental health. And this has been reinforced by subsequent regulations and guidance as well, such as the Management of Health and Safety at Work regulations in 1999. But beyond those legal requirements, I think there are 4 other reasons why considering the mental health of your freelancers is worthwhile to your business as a hirer. The first one is productivity and product costs. There's a number of research studies which show that poorer mental health has a direct link to not only poorer productivity, but poorer creativity, increased mistakes being made, poorer relationships at work, higher likelihood of time off due to physical and mental illness. So plenty of data have shown that direct relationship to poorer mental health means poorer productivity and quality of work. All businesses need to be efficient, especially right now. And we know that many businesses already see freelancers as an expensive option, as more expensive. We could go into the details of whether that's true or not. I think actually freelancers tend to be more cost effective, but there's a mindset around freelancers being seen as more expensive in comparison to full-time employees. So if you see freelancers as costly, then why on earth would you not be doing everything you can to work with that group as effectively, as cost effectively as possible? You're effectively wasting money if you don't. So if you're not considering the well-being of your freelancers, that has a direct impact on their productivity and quality of work. Your project costs will increase and be higher due to poorer productivity, due to increased mistakes, lack of communication, lack of focus, lack of attention. And our estimates suggest that a lack of tangible support for freelancers and effective engagement with those freelancers leads to around a 30% decrease in productivity or a 10% increase in costs. So that's number one. Without that support for those freelancers, productivity declines, project costs go up. The second point is talent acquisition costs. 95% of freelancers say that they would not work again for a business who has treated them poorly. 95%. That includes behaviors which negatively impact their mental health, such as ghosting, late payments, bullying, harassment, as well as lacking support, poor or no onboarding, poor communication, unclear requirements, no feedback. The cost of finding good freelancers is already really high, whether it be spending 10 to 30% on recruitment commissions or the time and energy of your team, finding, reviewing, meeting, onboarding, organising contracts, doing all the paperwork, compliance, only to then to lose them at the end of that project because they don't want to work with you again. The average cost of finding and onboarding a new freelancer can range from somewhere around £300 to £1,000, depending on specialist roles. So having to do this repeatedly, not building relationships where you can return to meet and work with those freelancers again and again, is going to cost you thousands of pounds every year. Working well with freelancers helps you reduce the cost of that talent acquisition and helps you build this trusted bench and a network of freelancers who are closer to your business. The third piece is reputational damage. And again, 96% of freelancers say that they would tell fellow freelancers about clients who had treated them badly or poorly behaving. So if someone has had a negative impact on their well-being and their mental health or just treated them badly, they are telling their friends. And we see this happening all the time. Things are not getting posted publicly. This is not on LinkedIn. This is not on socials. But many, if not most, freelancers are actively involved in communities and online spaces and have networks with other freelancers in that same sector. And they talk a lot. We ask each other about a new client if we haven't worked with them before, what they like to work with. We share feedback on clients that we've been recently with. We ask for suggestions on how to deal with things like late invoices, and we share with other freelancers feedback on clients and how they were to work with. There are blacklists, there are red flags, and there are green flags and green lists and white lists as well. With the majority of businesses who are saying that they're looking to increase the amount of time they're spending working with freelancers and contractors in the future, and pressures on perm staff increasing, meaning we have to turn to freelancers more often. The need to create fluid and flexible and freelance-driven teams with the right talent that we can trust will become a dominant model in a lot of sectors. It is already. And reputation matters. Just as your employee value proposition matters and allows you to attract and hire and retain the right employees, your freelancer value proposition needs to work just as hard to ensure that you're able to continue working with the best talent. And of course, there's a very simple fourth reason: because it's the right thing to do. People's well-being and welfare matter, and caring about the people that you work with that are delivering business for you and helping your business grow and do its good work, regardless of legal obligation or commercial upside, is the right thing to do. So those are the reasons why. What can hirers actually do to tackle some of the issues which freelancers are facing? If the reasons to care about mental health are really clear and there are kind of commercial upsides, what are the tangible steps that employers and hirers can take? Critically, I think it's important to know that it's not your responsibility to take care of freelancers' mental health. Self-employed individuals need to take responsibility for their own well-being and working well and setting their boundaries and running their business, and they need to take responsibility for the things which they are in control of. But I think employers and hirers need to ensure that you're not doing anything intentionally or unintentionally which could adversely affect the people that you're working with, could adversely have a negative impact on their mental health as an absolute minimum. Look for the things which you might be doing that is having a negative impact on the people you're working with and try and improve those. Beyond that, to build this credibility, to build trust, build reputation, you can obviously do additional things, add additional considerations, add more stuff to work effectively with your freelancers and support them and make them want to work with you. But let's just look at the basics, the bare minimum. What are the most common challenges freelancers face? And what are the things that hirers can do in order to resolve some of those issues and better support their freelancers? The number one challenge that freelancers face is irregularity of income. I think that's not a surprise. It's the biggest stressor for freelancers, and being in control of your own cash flow is hard. 71% of freelancers, however, had to chase late invoices during 2025. So that's not, I couldn't find any work. That's, I found work and they weren't paying me. So one of the most impactful changes that any hirer can make as an employer is to pay your freelancers on time. Improve your processes around invoice handling, pay promptly, ideally ahead of the due date, and provide really clear accountability and chains of communications around payment issues. Just get those payment invoices paid and sorted and done. And if you're unable to manage this at scale because maybe you're dealing with hundreds, if not thousands of contingent workers, work with an intermediary platform that handles all of that for you. So they're making payments on your behalf and handling process, and you just have one invoice to pay each month. The second thing is a major issue for freelancers, and it's often linked to payments, is a lack of clear and fair contracts in place ahead of working together. Too many freelancers are asked to work without a contract, and too many projects are cancelled at the last minute or cut short or scopes are changed, and that can lead to real problems for cash flow or knowing what the position that the freelancer is in. So, second point is ensure you have a really clear and simple contract process in place for your freelancers before they start working, and that the core clauses in those contracts are not overly burdensome on issues like liability or preventing freelancers from talking about their work or so on. So contracts protect both you and the freelancer, so it's mutually beneficial to have that paperwork in place. The third thing is around poor experience actually on the project. So there's often a lack of clarity around ways of working, how to get started, contact details, access to tools and systems, payment processes, so on. Often a freelancer faces a huge amount of work of having to just get started, and quite often we hide that. It's a hidden problem because we're really good at just figuring things out. But it does slow down our ability to start working on day one. So put in place a freelancer-specific onboarding process, covering your business, its cultures, its ways of working, key contacts, escalation points, feedback, signposting, support, and do something which is specific for freelancers working with you, and make sure they all get access to that. Secondly, appoint internal responsibility, somebody who is responsible and accountable for designing that onboarding experience, the freelancer experience whilst they're with you and engaging with those freelancers, to ensure that someone somewhere in the business is looking at this end-to-end process to improve the relationship on both sides. And obviously using automation and tools and platforms can dramatically make this easier and a lower cost. But ensure that there is an onboarding process in place, and make sure that somebody is designing it and thinking about it. And the final thing is around a lack of awareness of support. And as you know, I mentioned this stat on a regular basis. 70% of freelancers aren't sure where to find support for their mental health at work. And that's a huge gap which is so easy to close if hirers start taking responsibility in doing this. It's a simple action for any employer to resolve by providing simple signposting to good quality resources and support for your freelancers. You don't have to be providing that support. You don't have to be creating that content. Signposting to where those resources exist is probably enough. So ensure within that onboarding that it has adequate signposting to general resources for freelancers, to sector-specific support, to mental health resources. That could be coming from charities or industry bodies. There are plenty out there. Or work with us at Leapers to help you build a portal that you can signpost people to. I don't expect every employer and every hirer to implement every single one of these guidelines. But the very least that we ask hirers to do is signposting to support, so that other organizations are at least able to support your freelancers' mental health where you might be less able. And there are a number of amazing support organizations who can help with every aspect of working more effectively, recruiting, hiring, onboarding, operational support, compliance, mental health support, direct support for freelancers, communities, payments. There are plenty of tools and platforms and partners who can help you put that structure and infrastructure in place. You don't need to be doing it yourself. So if you're not sure where to start, get in touch. We can connect you with the right people. There's a lot to cover there, and obviously we will try and condense this into really simple stories which we can take to hirers. But I think there's three things which I hope that you take away from this. Number one, there are benefits to you as an organization if you're hiring freelancers in putting support in place. Number two, the things you need to put in place are not onerous. They're really straightforward. And number three, there's lots of parts of the support ecosystem that are already doing this work. And it might just be a case of you signposting to those organizations to support your freelancers to close that 70% gap. If any of this resonates with you, or you're asking questions, okay, well, how can we tangibly start to do these things? Please get in touch. A big proportion of my time now is spent on helping organizations, helping their freelancers. And I'm always keen to talk to anybody who believes that this is the right thing to do. Thanks for listening.